Hello, everyone. I am grateful for the opportunity to interview this young woman. Her name is Caroline Hiler, and she is a 2015 graduate of Northampton High School and a 2019 graduate of Liberty University. Some of you met her in 2019 before she did her mission trip to Sweden through Crew. And she's going to just give us an update on her life and her experiences. And I'm going to just give her a chance to just share her experiences in Sweden over the years, and we'll just go from there. So, hi, Caroline. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks.
So, tell us about Sweden and your experiences.
Yes. So, it's been now 4 years since I've talked to y'all. So, it's been a while. Um, and 2 of those years I spent in Sweden. Um, and the main focus of what we were hoping to do there. So, Crew is an established organization, but the group I was going with, we were starting a new branch of Crew that specifically would work with refugees, the local church, and university students, kind of all as one ministry. And so when we first got there, we were the only team in our city and the only team really ever trying this new strategy. Um, so we got to learn a lot though from the staff that were already there. The neat thing about our team in Sweden was that we had Swedish staff, American staff, and Swiss staff. So we got to learn different strategies and ways to evangelize and talk to people and just do ministry in different cultures. Um, and it was as I kind of learned about before going, there are a lot of refugees living in Sweden, as I had mentioned before, the most per capita in Europe, Sweden has. So when you're in the city, Swedes are naturally white and have blonde hair, blue eyes, and then in general, the refugees are coming from places like Africa and the Middle East and Southeast Asia. And so it's very apparent there, and for the first time, a lot of racial diversity. Um, and so there's all this new tension going on in the country, in churches, where they're really diverse and they just literally haven't ever been. And so we come into this, and coming from the US, you're like, this is more similar than now looking to the US, but for them, it was the first time they've ever experienced this. So a lot of what we were doing was talking with churches about this new thing that's going on and creating spaces for church members to have conversations with people who are different than them, and how to invite them into their community and how to implement elements of what they're used to church being like. And then at the same time, all these refugees who they all want to get to Sweden because it's socialism. So once they get granted asylum, they have housing and food and education all paid for. But the thing that they are really lacking is friendship and connections. And I even met a man who was a poverty refugee who came to Sweden and said that at one point he was so depressed and lonely that he wished he had just died of starvation in his country rather than coming all that way to be so lonely, until he found church and until he found community. So that was kind of the picture of what we were working in. Um, Really focusing on helping churches create spaces that invite Swedish university students into who are very post-Christian, probably had never met a Christian in their entire life, and then also creating spaces for these refugees to feel like they're cared for and are seen. And usually it's these younger people, so university students who are more willing, have more time to interact with refugees. And so we also worked on creating a lot of spaces that they could interact, and especially the university students who were Christian. We would mentor them about how to share their faith through relationships, and um, how when we would host events, like we had one called Conversation Cafe, where we would have tables with different topics. So, for example, success, or another one would be death, or another one would be gender. And the whole idea of these nights was anyone could come, and we'd have some tables in English and some in Swedish. So people, the refugees, some of them could speak English, but a lot of them were learning Swedish. So you could practice your English or Swedish, but then also meet people and also learn about people. And we found this event to be really successful, that a lot of the university students enjoyed. The churches let us host it there, and the refugees also enjoyed coming too. And from there, we could then continue the conversations with people, which was kind of the goal of the nights, was to provide community, but then also see, oh, who is interested in talking more about these topics. So that's a lot what ministry looked like at the start. Was a lot of learning, a lot of meeting people, a lot of organizing different things, trying things that worked in the past. And now, this new idea of working with the university students, the church, and refugees actually is in 2 different cities now in Sweden. And so they're working there, doing similar things, and in different cities it looks different, as well.
Well, it sounds like you had a lot of unique experiences in Sweden. However, I also realized very shortly after you arrived in Sweden, many things changed. And all of us experienced change in 2020. And I just want you to briefly tell us about how how you had to alter your plans, how you had to alter your focus, or even your methods in ministry once the pandemic started.
Yes. So the interesting thing about Sweden, if any of y'all saw this on the news, is that it actually didn't shut down during COVID. Sweden was trying for herd immunity, which wasn't successful, but because of that, we didn't have as many restrictions, barely any restrictions in the entire country. So we did do safety precautions for a lot of things. But we were still able to have some group things as well. The nice thing was, though, and a part that I really enjoyed about it, is we were able to have a lot of group things and meet a lot of people when we first got there. Then herd immunity, which they were going for, was almost no restrictions at the beginning. So we kind of continued like normal. Then almost halfway, probably through my time there, it got a little more serious. So we had some restrictions. But then what we kind of did was just really focus on the relationships we already had. And so it was a lot more like 1 and 2 people. So I would meet with either one person or 2 people generally, a couple times a day for Bible study, discipleship, or just to talk about things, or similar, like I was saying, like connecting people. My church also started this ministry that used soccer as a way to give. It was boys ages about 10 to 15. They would allow them to play soccer, bring someone from the local soccer club came, and so it was like a cool person who knew a lot about soccer would come, which also made more of the boys want to come on Friday nights from about 6 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. to kind of give them an outlet on those nights where usually There's a lot of gangs in the refugee neighborhoods, but then they could come play soccer, learn. We would teach them about morals and then invite them to come to youth group during the week, and they would want to come do that too. And so, and that was outside sometimes. So we kind of found ways around it. And, for good and for good and bad, there weren't as many restrictions there.
What types of lifelong friendships and relationships did you build while in Sweden?
Yes, great ones. They have a saying that Americans, they say we're like peaches and that we share everything, but we keep our core for a couple people. Whereas Swedes are like coconuts and they take a lot to crack into, but once you do, you're there forever. And I definitely felt that with a few of my Swedish friends who I ended up mentoring or just, walking alongside and doing Bible studies together. Like we broke through the shell. And so I'll definitely be lifelong friends with them. And we write letters to keep up with each other. And then for a lot of my friends, some other friends who were immigrants or refugees, it was just really special time to be friends too, because I was new to the country, they were new to the country. We both felt misunderstood in different ways. And so those bonds too, we keep up with each other as we can.
Did you experience homesickness a lot or loneliness while you were there?
Yes, I definitely did, especially with COVID and not really being able to come back to the US like I thought I would be able to. I think I went a little over a year without seeing a family member. And that was just, and something about knowing how far I was made it feel a little further. So I definitely experienced loneliness then. And in Sweden, it gets really dark in the winter and almost in the first November I was there, we literally had 8 hours of daylight for the entire month. And so the loneliness kind of gets heightened by sadness in those winter months, but it also would be a time, especially with the people who are new to Sweden, we really bonded in those months about this place is crazy, but wanting to like encourage one another and go on lots of walks together and kind of find ways to keep our spirits up. It definitely led to lots of really good conversations about who is the true light and how light matters so much in our lives.
I really like that. And one thing I noticed when you were there, we were communicating, and you would always be asking the people who were you're communicating with in the States what prayer requests we had. And I believe that was really good because I'm sure that kept you grounded because not only were you thinking about what you were going through, but you were also praying for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you return home?
So I guess I returned home in 2022, 2021. Yeah, 2022 ish. No, 2021. Sorry.
Okay.
And then when I returned home, I came back to the Eastern Shore. I grew up in Northampton County, but my parents had moved up to Accomack. And so when I was in Sweden, I knew that, well, I'd always thought I wanted to get my master's of divinity. And, but then God kind of segued my plans and I went to Sweden. And even when I was there, I definitely enjoyed what I was doing and would love to maybe do it again in the future, but still felt this drive to want to continue my education. And I just had this overwhelming feeling that I should apply to Duke University. one of my professors in undergrad told me about it. She said, I think you would really like it there. I checked it out. I applied. I got in. But I had a year then in between Sweden and coming to Duke, which is where I am now, actually. And so for that year, I worked at my parents' church, which is now my church, in Only. I worked at Only Baptist, and I worked with their high schoolers, and then also with I led a young women's Bible study, and then helped with the young adults Bible study, and then I also helped lead worship on Sunday mornings, and some adult Bible studies on relational evangelism, which I really enjoyed.
That's really exciting, and I'm really happy that you're still active and pursuing your calling in ministry. What are some scriptures or encouraging words that have kept you going through this time?
Yes, so usually my verse that I always go back to is John 15. And I constantly went back to John 15 in Sweden and in college and when I was at home and even now, because I think, truly the reason why we're Christians and the whole reason why we have life is because of Jesus. And if we don't abide in him, we don't have the fruits of the Spirit. And if we don't abide in him, we don't have life. And if we don't abide in him, then life doesn't really have purpose. And so whenever I start to feel unsettled or stressed or lonely, I usually go back and read John 15, and I think about abiding in him and how, sometimes that hurts and he has to cut off parts that aren't bearing fruit. But then that he's there and that he loved me enough to die for me and that he's my closest friend. And so that is also, I usually like to listen to the hymn, What a Friend I Have in Jesus. That's also a song I go to pretty regularly. And I like to think about him with me.
Well, that's really encouraging. The word just has everything we need. When we're down, when we're upset, when we're lonely, Jesus Christ is the answer for all those things. And I'm glad you have been able to turn to him in all circumstances. What are some of your future goals? You're in divinity school now. Or if you're sure, what are some of your goals for your future?
Yes. So I've completed 1 year of divinity school. I have 2 more left. Currently, I'm on a track to get my PhD. I would love to get my PhD in the New Testament and to teach. Since I became a Christian, felt a calling all my life to teach the Bible. And I'm still feel passionate about that. And so I'd love to teach the Bible to people in college or seminary or missionaries, pastors, just to equip people to better know God and know the word. And so that's one of my goals. And then at the same time, I would love to be a pastor. And so that's why I'm doing a Master's of Divinity during the summers. We intern at churches. So I just finished an internship at a church for this summer where I was basically the associate pastor and got to be mentored by a pastor. So that was really great. And next summer I'll do something similar. So I'll get to get both the practical side and the academic side while I'm here.
Well, this is so awesome. I'm so happy that you are continuing your walk with Christ and not just that, but continuing to just pursue the calling he has on your life. And I just continue to hope and pray that you have success in your endeavors. And I'm glad that you were able to catch up with us because, a lot of people were praying for you and just so happy that you returned home safely So happy that you had a successful 2 years in Sweden, and just happy for all the things that you're doing. I just look forward to hearing great things that the Lord is doing in your life in the future. So just make sure you stay in touch, Caroline.
Yeah, thank you. And honestly, thank you all so much for your prayers. I really feel like it's, yeah, some of those days you're like, wow, looking back, I know, it was God and the prayers of his people who helped me get through all this and sustain me to where I am. And so I'm really grateful.
Amen to that. So I would conclude our interview, and I really thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule, and just wish you the best. And, we're just going to continue to keep you in prayer, and just let us know how things go for you in the future. God bless you.
Thank you.